Well, as we sit here Thursday afternoon, the Padres are still alive, Derek Togerson. Now, this could change.
No, they're not. This is
it's a very delicate
technically
situation.
Correct, yes. Mathematically, you are in fact correct.
Don't give us this
Realistically,
Josh Hader stuff,
baseball games aren't played on spreadsheets or played on diamonds.
You're taking the Josh Hader approach. What are we in the playoff race? Well, I mean, yeah, technically you are in the playoff race, but we
you
know
want me to do everything, Darnay. You want me to do everything.
It's true. Write a web story. Do something for TV. Do the podcast. It's all on your shoulders.
Get 4 outs in one day.
It's too much. Asking way too much. So yeah, we'll discuss. We can't sit here and be like, wow, the Padres are still alive, because I mean, if you get to this Thursday night, they may no longer still be alive. Friday, they may no longer still be alive. Saturday. So we'll discuss what we've seen from the club, but not gonna sit here and go on and on about, hey, they could hold on to this thing and shock the world and everybody else, including Derek Togerson, by coming out with that third and final wild card spot. That's just the situation they're in. But I think there are bigger fish to fry as it pertains to this club, and strong opinions and some insight on what could be coming from the folks that cover the team closely on a day-to-day basis. And Derek put something on the NBC San Diego sports page, said it's time for one individual to go. So we will discuss that. Mm-hmm. Also, I dropped the number for the voicemail line, and we got a few messages from fans just on their take on the season, and they all kind of went, appropriately enough. The topic was kind of whether Melvin should go, whether Preller should go. So we will get to all those, and we are live on the NBC7 YouTube page. So if you have your own hot takes that you want to drop, hit the chat. We will get to those. So appreciate everybody watching on YouTube, NBC San Diego streaming channel, and of course, listening in your podcast app. Thanks to OG, the sponsor of the On Friar Podcast, constantly updating their menu as they did this year, bringing in new items that keep OG's menu fresh and on trend. They've got new items like the Mediterranean Salmon Bowl, specialty pizzas, buffalo cauliflower, and Nashville hot chicken sandwich. You can take advantage of OG's loyalty program. It's super easy. You can do it online. You can earn loyalty points, rewards, and exclusive offers, all of which leads to fun and free food. And ordering online from OG's is easier than ever. You can get OG's straight to your door. Without further ado, the walk-up music. Great to be with you. It is the On Friar Podcast. Last one of the regular season, probably the last one of the 2023 season. Derek
holding on, Darnay. Just keep holding on to that hope.
That's the fun of sports, I mean, we get to hang on to whatever slim percentages there are. And look, for a team that has provided so little fun and has been just not interesting very much, to give us just this little outside chance, why not? We've been waiting for something all season. Do we think it's going to play out? Probably not, but beats being eliminated a week ago or earlier this week, like the Giants.
But does it though? It's just delaying the inevitable. It's for them to get in. They'd have to sweep the White Sox. Okay, infinitely possible. Chicago's bad. They threw in a white towel a long time ago. Then you have to have Cubs lose 4 in a row and the Marlins lose 4 in a row. Not either one. Both of those things have to happen. And the Reds have to go like 1-3. You need all of these things to happen at once. This would be a miracle of 1980 U.S. hockey team level. Like you're talking that much random wacky crap has to happen. And I know random wacky crap happens in baseball all the time. But this is even beyond the realm of possibility for Major League Baseball standards.
It's true. I can't argue with you there. That's the situation they put themselves in. And now you sit here and think, oh man, if they had gone 4-9 in extra inning games, 5-8 in extra inning games, if Tommy Edman hadn't rip their hearts out in back-to-back days. You could go back to any number of instances and say, man, if that had played out differently, we would be in a different situation right now. But alas, that's the spot that the Padres find themselves in. And I don't know what any of this means for next year. I don't know what any of this means for Bob Melvin's future. I don't know. Juan Soto's talked about, hey, this is good momentum for next season. I don't know. There's a lot of time between now and opening day of next year for that momentum to go away. Guys like Tatis and Bogarts have talked about just kind of what they've learned and figuring things out, even though it's too late. So maybe that does something for them. If there's some lesson or some feeling about themselves or clubhouse dynamic that they can kind of carry over into next year. I don't know. That's to be seen. I think what is maybe more interesting is like what does this mean for obviously Bob Melvin and all that? Because at the very least, you could say, the team hasn't necessarily quit on him like they have in the past. That doesn't necessarily dull the sting of this season and what it's been and how it's gone so far. But we've seen this club look a whole lot worse in this spot in the season. And here they are hanging on for dear life. Again, what that means, I don't know. But it's just kind of added an interesting layer as we kind of project forward and imagine what could happen in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, there's so much weird about this season. We're going to get into this on this podcast too, but it's like, there are so many ways you can go with bringing all of this down. There's so many different things you can say, well, that's the reason. Well, this is the reason. Well, here's the reason. And it would all make sense, right? And then you look at what they've done in September and they're 17-7. And you're going, where the hell has it been all year? And then the guys in the clubhouse, like, we knew we were going to go on a run. We knew this is the kind of team that we had. We don't know why it took us this long to get to it. And I think that will forever be the thing. Why'd you lose 2 out of 3 to the Royals? Why'd you have a losing record, 1-5, 1-6 against the Pirates? Just go 500 against the Pirates and you have a chance. Like that's all you have to do. It's just the weirdest crap I've seen in a baseball season in a long, long time.
I can't argue with you. I think if this season has been anything, it has been strange. It has been bizarre. And it continues to be. I mean, just the fact that they're doing this right now just adds to the strange nature of this season. A quick hello to our friend Lauren, who says hello. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate you being with us. It's been bizarre from basically start to finish, and now here in the finish, hey, finally getting a win in extras, finally getting 1-run wins, walk-off wins, the first since April, kind of exercising some of these demons, but knowing that there's a good chance it doesn't amount to a whole lot. But I think it's at least encouraging that guys haven't folded the tents where they certainly could have. And I think some people are saying, hey, Soto's getting his numbers, Machado's getting his 30th homer, yada yada. But they've all stepped up and done good for the team and contributed in key spots in this last week. And so I think there's also something to like continuity, and you see teams that are kind of trying to figure out the right mix of guys, and you constantly see like a new configuration every single year, whether it's a new manager, new clubhouse leaders, new stars, what have you, and the team never gets a chance to like really gel. And so maybe what will come out of this is like, all right, it's a down year, but you had the year with Bogarts and not the year that he was expecting. Another year with Soto. See Campusano come into his own. Like maybe you see these kind of key pieces get some experience with one another, and maybe that'll help next year, having some kind of continuity, some time for them to gel and get to know one another. And maybe as a result of that, some roles change. I think there's some people wondering like, how much does Xander Bogaerts step up kind of from a leadership standpoint now being, when he's in his second season. So I think these are things that you have to consider, because I think it's easy to be like, nope, out with this, in with that. But there is kind of the human side of it where, it's the dynamics get a little askew when there's just constantly like the shifting foundation, and every day, every month, every year you look up and there's somebody, next to you that you're going to battle with. Might help to have kind of this core group stick together a little bit, and maybe having a year together will help next year. I don't know, just reaching for anything.
The core group is good. We know the core group is good. We know the core group has a lot of talent. We know, you go out there with Xander Bogaerts, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., Joe Musgrove, Darvish. Like you're going to win baseball games. Like the core, the talent is here. Talent has not been a problem with this club. Talent was not a problem with the club last year. The club has talent coming out its ears. You're going to probably have the Cy Young winner on this team this year, and maybe not finish a winning record. You got to win 3 games in a row in Chicago just to avoid not having a winning record. 2 out of 3 gets you to 500, 81 and 81. But you got to win all 3 of them to be over 500. Who thought they'd be in the situation right now? Not very few people thought they'd be anywhere close to this kind of a thing. You've got all of this talent. And this is what's kind of weird. And this is where I think we're going to maybe, Darnay, start going down the road of what needs to change. Because you look at that 17-7 record in September, right? That has been without Jake Cronenworth, without Gary Sanchez, without Yu Darvish, without Joe Musgrove, with Manny Machado with an elbow that's so bad he can only DH. So you're losing arguably the 1 or 2 best defensive infielders a game, especially at third base with him and Nolan Arenado. So your talent level goes down. You replace him with guys like Matt Waldron and Matthew Batten and bring back Jurickson Profar and somehow get better. And it really got me thinking. They're 32 and 33-22 with Matt Batten on the roster. They're 12-5 since bringing back Jurickson Profar. I know how big a deal he was last year for this club, right? They're not getting $90 million extensions anytime soon. These are guys. Batten is a career minor leaguer. And yet they get better. And it starts to make you think like it's a chemistry thing, right? Like we've talked about all year, but maybe this is kind of the proof that we need to say you can assemble a bunch of talent, but maybe AJ Preller don't know how to build a team. And there's a big difference between those two things. And that's why I'm thinking it's got to be a change at GM at this point.
Yes. And you wrote a piece along those lines for the NBC San Diego sports page that I definitely want to dive into and get your thoughts on that. One interesting point, as it pertains to roster construction, you mentioned all these guys, Eggy Rosario coming in and getting some reps, Brett Sullivan getting some reps, and Bob Melvin's kind of had some interesting comments, in the last few weeks, with those guys getting more opportunities to play. Like this is how a team should function. Like everybody's involved. Eggy Rosario is getting reps. And a lot of these, it's because Manny Machado has the elbow, and so he's not able to play in the field. But it's allowing other guys to kind of feel involved and get their sea legs and get some experience and build some confidence. And that's something that we didn't see early in the season because of, it was like a roster construction piece. You had 2 DHs that basically couldn't play in the field in Nelson Cruz and Matt Carpenter, and neither one of them were doing a whole lot at the plate. And so that limits what you're able to do just in terms of, shuffling the lineups, shuffling who's out in the field one day to the next. And it puts so much pressure on kind of those top guys to perform. And that was probably going to be the case regardless. But you've seen some of these guys and Luis Campusano being a great example, how he's really seized this opportunity once he got healthy, realizing that, okay, maybe Austin Nola isn't the guy. We've got something Luis Campusano, and he's really thrived even after, before he tweaked his ankle, but then after Gary Sanchez got hurt, when, we've talked about Gary Sanchez's, catcher ERA with Blake Snell, how great a combo that was. But then Snell and Campy, they hadn't missed a beat, and so I think what you're starting to figure out, like in Bob Melvin's ideal world, because this is what he had in Oakland, more guys, a wider array of guys that you can plug in and play. And it doesn't have to look the same way every single day. That's how he would like to manage a team. Hasn't really necessarily had that flexibility early in the first portion of the season. And maybe you're seeing that benefit them while all these other guys are injured. So I thought that was an interesting note and something that has kind of, come to the surface a bit the last few weeks. But I mean, let's get to your piece and your thoughts, because like, And when we hear some of the voice messages, like they're going to be along these lines too, because I think all anybody is thinking about is like Melvin on one side, Preller on the other, and what happens. And that's certainly been a discussion,
which is overly simplistic, really.
A little bit, yeah. Oh, for sure. But often the nature of business. But you've seen enough, and you've decided it's time, Derek Togerson.
Time for AJ Preller to go. And I'll say this, it's not, I like AJ. We've talked to AJ many times over the years, and he's one of the best evaluators of talent in the game. There's no question. He can find you. I mean, look at all the guys he's traded away that other teams want. I mean, I even forgot that Emmanuel Clase was in the Padres system at the very low levels, and he was involved in a trade. Like all these guys he's able to find. Jack Sawinski turned into a decent ball player with the Pirates. He was drafted in like the 9th round, and they threw a bunch of money at him in high school because they saw the potential in him. He finds talent, right? Talent, again, is not the problem. And I went and looked at an article that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution did with Braves general manager Alex Anthopoulos. All right, he took the job after the 2017 season. The Braves had won 1 division title in 12 years. They had 4 consecutive losing seasons. Since then, they've won the NL East 6 times in a row. And they have won a World Series in 2021 when they really had no business winning a World Series in 2021. Because when he was a GM with the Blue Jays, he did the same thing that AJ Preller kind of did. It just assembled a bunch of talent, and the Blue Jays weren't winning. And then he went and was assistant with the Dodgers, and he saw the importance of chemistry and the importance of finding not just talented players, but the right talented players to bring into an organization. And here's a quote from that story from the AJC. For me, it was shifting from collecting talent to building a team. We walked away from a lot of really talented players just because they didn't fit, where in the past, I would have taken the talent and figured, okay, let's just collect the talent. It should work. It was more of a conscious, I'm not going to fall into the temptation. I'm going to try to stay disciplined and really be selective about who we bring in, even though we have to walk away from talent at times. End quote. That sounds a lot like what's happening at Petco Park, right? Assemble the talent and everything should be okay. So what do? They let Freddie Freeman walk, and they let Dansby Swanson walk in free agency, and 2 years in a row, they win more than 100 games. They get better by letting these guys go because he goes out and finds a Sean Murphy and a Matt Olson, both formerly with Bob Melvin, by the way, and let them come in and let them do their thing because they fit the clubhouse dynamic a whole lot better than the guys that they had in there, right? They make the right moves. And that's why I'm thinking, AJ, it's not clicking with him for whatever reason. He's not able to put together a full, complete team with the kind of guys that fit into the clubhouse dynamic. And if you can't see it after 9 years, you're just not going to be able to see it. So AJ, like I said, he should be thanked for making Padres baseball relevant again, for giving us all something exciting to watch, and for making us believe it's possible here. But he also needs to be replaced by somebody who can take him to that next level because he just has not shown the ability to do that.
Yeah, it's really interesting how, just AJ's trajectory, just the way it's gone back and forth. I think it's been so hard for the fan base and all of us to really evaluate because, when I started in 2019, Tatis comes up, he lands Machado. There's the In Preller We Trust t-shirts. People couldn't be happier. Obviously, that season ends poorly, but makes some savvy moves going into 2020. 2020, they make the playoffs in a shortened season, gets Clevenger. There's the Mariners deal that in the short term worked out well. Then 2020, before 2021, who does he get? He gets Snell, he gets Musgrove, he gets Darvish. Like, oh my goodness, this is insane. That season ends poorly. Bunch of pitchers get hurt. They're throwing anybody out there just to, finish off the season and get them through some innings. The dramatic collapse, all that. All of a sudden, he doesn't look so good. And some of the trades that we saw were kind of aging poorly a little bit. And then last year, a swing back in his favor. When he gets Soto, when he gets Hader, they go to the NLCS. And this year, it swings back the other way. It's just been such a wild kind of back and forth ride for him and ride for all of us to kind of go on along with him. Because on one hand, as a talent evaluator, the way he's stocked the system has been super, super impressive. the way he's pulled off these just monumental blockbusters is incredible, but there's always seemed to be something missing. And is it the player development piece? I think a lot of people have made a lot about kind of some of the trades, but I think if you go through, there aren't too many. I mean, you mentioned a guy like Clase, Max Fried, like there's certainly some guys. I think more recently, certainly since I've been covering the team, 2019 on, there aren't too many like David Bednar. I don't know. I mean, you can certainly criticize what was done at the deadline. Barlow's been good. Cooper's had some moments. But in terms of kind of prospects that have shipped away, there aren't too many that have gone and blown up and been phenoms elsewhere. I mean, best of luck to CJ Abrams, best of luck to James Wood and those guys. It's still a little bit early for that one. So
Ty France to an all-star game.
Ty France, yes.
Probably, yeah, he hasn't been great this year. He's been dinged up. Yeah, it's a clause A, but again, nobody even realized he was in the system, traded at such a young age. CJ Abrams looks like he's brown into a stud. Mackenzie Gore, he looks like he's going to be at worst a number 3 starter for a long time. And in the big league rotation, you'd certainly take that. But other than like Taylor Trammell didn't work out. Some of the other, quote unquote top prospects that they had, they were supposed to be the guys. Gabriel Arias has not worked out.
Yeah.
Nobody saw Bednar coming. That's the one who, God bless that kid, because man, he was going to be kind of a long relief kind of guy. No one saw him being an all-star closer type. So good on Pittsburgh for turning him into that. But Tucupita Marcano, he's hasn't exactly blown up anywhere. It's been these types of guys who we talked about a lot, who have, they've gone and there's some of them are still sticking around in the major leagues here and there, but they haven't gone off and become superstars. Abrams, I think, is the one who's looking like, that kid's going to pop.
Yeah, for sure. And it just seemed like something was missing within the organization. We've talked about like helping guys come in and be the best versions of themselves. I think we've seen that a little bit more on the pitching side. I think obviously the presence of Ruben Niebla has been really instrumental there. Offensively, you can go down the list of guys, Mitch Moreland always seems to come to mind. Just in turn to illustrate, and I know there's others, but I'm drawing a blank right now. Guys that come in, Josh Bell, you know what I mean? Like Brandon Drury had some big moments and that sort of thing, but like guys that you never feel like you get the best versions of them when they come in. A lot of criticism about like the Eric Hosmer deal, but maybe you need to just kind of make a splash. So what have you? And then I think a lot of the contracts that he handed out, like probably didn't need to pay Jake Cronenworth when he paid Jake Cronenworth. And maybe this is a total hindsight take, like nobody was thinking this at this point. But if you had given Darvish's deal to Blake Snell last, 6 months ago, maybe you'd feel a little bit better. I don't know. But again, nobody was thinking along those lines at that point. So that's kind of a stretch. But yeah, obviously they've kind of put themselves in a challenging spot. Now, you read what the aces of the world are writing, that they're going to try and trim down payroll, get to 20 mil or 200 million. You've got basically if Soto's around next year, you're paying him 30. You basically got 150 million tied up in 8 guys.
He's not getting 30.
Well, 25, whatever it is. It's somewhere in that range. You've got like 145, 150 tied up in 8 guys, and then you have to build the rest of the roster, which could include replacements for Snell, Lugo, and Waka, and Martinez.
Exactly. I can tell you right now what they're going to be having. 1 second. I was looking at this just the other day, and I took a couple of notes.
I was looking at some of the future commitments, and I think it was up to like 120 with just Suarez, Cronenworth, Darvish, Musgrove, Tatis, Machado, Bogarts.
Here you go. It's Bogarts, Musgrove, Machado, Darvish, Tatis, Suarez, Kim Cronenworth, $115.5 million. Arbitration eligible. New estimates: Soto 28, Barlow 7.5, Grisham 5, Tim Hill 3.5. If you bring Tim Hill back, of course. If you bring, this is all assuming these guys on the roster who might be here next year.
That's another episode.
That's the $45 million. So now you're up to 160. Then you got pre-arbitration guys. You got to figure Steven Wilson, Pedro Avila, Tom Cosgrove, Alec Jacob, Matt Waldron, Jay Grew, Luis Campusano, Jose Sokar, Ege Rosario, Matthew Patton. Some combination of those, right? So you get 6 spots, 7 spots. You bring in a guy like Jackson Merrill, like 4.5, 5.2 million, somewhere in there. So you're already at 160-ish. this is where it gets interesting. Lugo is gone. There's no question. He's outpitched it. I'd love to see him come back. So he's at $7.5 million next year. Well beyond that. You say he gets maybe 10, 12 per year on a little longer term deal. Martinez is after $17 million if the team option picks up, or $8 million if the player option picks up, or if the team says no and he says no, then it's nothing. Waka is 16.5 on the team or 7 on the player. So if you get Martinez and Waka, that's a 33.5 just for those two guys. Matt Carpenter is a $5.5 million player option. You hope he says no.
Why would he?
That saves you 5.5 there. But you're already, seriously, at that point, you are already at $200 million. And that's
why would
19 guys. Like
that's
bad.
I think sometime in the next few weeks, we'll probably do a who should stay, who should go episode. Why would Matt Carpenter say, where you're offering him a free $5 million? He doesn't have to do anything. Why would Matt Carpenter say no to that? He's not going to.
Because he wants to play. He's got to play here. He's probably mad about how he was used here. He wants competitors want to play. He hadn't won a World Series yet. He wants to go somewhere where he can try and win a World Series. He's played in it. He hadn't won it. He wants to try and win one, and he wants to try and play while doing so. This put a really sour taste in his mouth. I'd assume he probably does say, you know what, no, I'm good. I'll take less money to go try and play somewhere.
It worked well for the Padres. I just think, who's really all that confident in Matt Carpenter at this point? And you've got five and a half sitting there on the table. I don't know. Hopefully you're right. But yeah, I could see that one going either way. All that to say, they're in a challenging position. I think, as it relates to kind of the Preller-Melvin dynamic, and I mean, what a complex situation, Derek, now. And, we certainly wish the absolute best to Peter Sadler. I heard Dennis Lynn on with Darren Smith, and he said that it was a non-cancer related procedure, which would seem to be encouraging, but just want him to get healthy and be feeling good and hopefully see him around the ballpark as soon as possible. But just makes it a strange situation where, like, who's in control? Is the CEO, Eric Grupner, more involved than he normally would be? You hear, AC reporting that folks from Seidler Equity Partners could be involved. Who are those people? What's their outlook? I don't know. So
you got Tom Seidler too. His brother is also a minority, or Tom will probably be handling a lot of that.
Sure. So it just makes for just a strange kind of uncertain situation. And, on one hand, do these fresh sets of eyes and perspective, do they want to go in a different direction than Peter Seidler normally would? Or because, Seidler's in the situation that he's in, are they more apt to say, okay, let's not make any dramatic sweeping changes while all this is going on, but can we get people on the same page and function in a healthy manner? I think, in the Melvin and Preller dynamic, I think what you can always use kind of as like the trump card, so to speak, against Preller is the fact that, like, who's hiring the manager. And now you've had so many opportunities to do this, as so many people have noted. Like, general managers don't get this many opportunities to hire managers, and now he would be on
3 and 4 years. That's not good.
It's not good. And what do you hear, not just covering baseball, but sports in general, as somebody who's done it, Derek, a lot, in different sports at different levels? What do you hear when it's a quarterback talking about a new head coach, or a new head coach talking about a new GM, or what have you? It's okay, he's going to bring in his guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many opportunities has AJ Preller had to bring in his guy? Now, maybe with Melvin, there was some pressure to not go with a first timer. But the fact that there are these kind of communication issues, that they're not pulling in the same direction, on the same page, there's this tension that shouldn't happen when you've had so many opportunities to hire your guy. When you come in and you're new, of course, there might be some friction with the existing head coach. There might be some friction with the existing quarterback or point guard or starting pitcher or what have you, star player, because they're getting to know you. They don't know if you got a different vision, if you want to bring in different people. But Preller's been here for close to a decade. And at a certain point, like, you would have expected him to have his guy that he feels comfortable operating the way he wants to operate, and he can just kind of let them cook. And that obviously hasn't been the case. And so I think that's kind of the easy point that you can make if you feel like, okay, you agree with Derek, that his time has come. Like, He's had ample opportunities to bring his guy in, run this program the way that he wants the organization to be run, and yet we keep ending up in this situation where he is at odds with the manager. There's communication issues, players hearing different things, and it just kind of it gets in the way in a season where you're already not operating at peak level and you're dealing with other stuff that obviously doesn't help.
Yeah, and he got here in 2014, end of 2014. He gives Buddy Black about half a year, and Buddy's gone. And he had Rod Barajas, who had been a very successful minor league manager on the major league staff, and went with Pat Murphy as the interim manager, who was really, really good at Arizona State and was an abject disaster as a manager at the major league level. Didn't have any real managerial experience as a professional baseball coach. After that, he goes with Andy Green. And Andy Green was very successful and went to, Southern League Manager of the Year awards. He looked like he might be a guy. We're thinking, okay, this is like the first real hire. He's the young gun. He's getting the young analytics guy here. And Andy didn't really know how to connect with people. And so Andy's gone after a few years. It was 16, 17, 18. So 4 years Andy's on. And it goes to Jace Tingler. Kind of came out of nowhere. Really successful Dominican League manager. Has one good year during a pandemic. And then everything completely falls apart the next year because you find out that he was almost too chummy with the players and didn't really understand how to put game plans together. So he has those three guys, and none of them work. So then you're like, okay, listen, dude, stop going with the newbies. You got to get somebody who's established here. So he's one of the most established and respected guys in all of Major League Baseball, and Bob Melvin. And you're thinking, this is a slam dunk. This is a no-brainer. Bob Melvin's won everywhere he's gone. He's loved around the game. Everybody knows this man and loves him. Everybody knows he's a great man. He won 3 Manager of the Year awards. He won in freaking Oakland, which seems impossible, and yet he pulled it off. And AJ can't get along with him. So now you're going, okay, obviously the common denominator here is the guy who's hiring managers, because if he picked his guys, they don't work. If he picks a guy who's established, he can't get along with them. So who can work with AJ Preller at this point? I honestly don't know if there is anyone who can do that. And what's weird is, we all talk to people around there. It's not like, the Andrew Friedman situation where you're like, okay, I'm like handing lineup cards to Dave Roberts and you hear rumors like that. He's like, you will follow this script on who to use, what, when, and where, and why. Or Kevin Cash completely in Tampa, follow the script, and that is it. They really isn't doing a whole lot of that with Bob Melvin. But the kind of information they're sharing, the kind of information that Bob was really successful with in Oakland, that's not the kind of information that's being given back and forth here. So now you got this kind of, Bob's like, I know this works, so can you give me this? And AJ's like, I don't give a damn if that works. This is how we do things here, work with this. And so you got 2 people who are probably really digging their trenches in now, like, listen, I don't want to meet you halfway anymore because I don't really like you very much. So I would just Tom and Peter go in there and say, listen, grow the hell up or you're both out of here. Do they side with one of them? Do they keep them both and hope that it just kind of clears itself up? Do they make AJ start giving Bob the kind of information that he wants in the way that he wants it? Because, again, obviously that works. Do they tell Bob, I don't care what your gut tells you, you follow what general manager is doing, or else you can go ahead and find a way to leave? It's going to be really interesting to see what management says is the most important part of this and which way they want to run their organization. Because the bottom line is it's their call, and whatever they think is best for business is what they're going to do. We just don't know what that is.
It's very interesting, and it sounds like there's going to be a meeting of the minds of sort, in probably the 24 hours or so that follows, as Derek assumes the season coming to an end on Sunday.
I'm going to go ahead and say I'm pretty safe in that. I know it happens when you assume, but I don't think we'll be asked this time, Darnay.
So, So in the day or two that follow, there's going to be some sort of meeting. Who all is involved, I don't know. What I wouldn't be shocked to see play out is if it's Seidler or whoever, if they try and get Preller and Melvin together and say, look, guys, we think our best chance of success and getting to the finish line here, getting to the mountaintop, is with the 2 of you. A ultra aggressive, hardworking, general manager and president of baseball operations that is a great evaluator of talent and has, stocked the farm system and one of the most respected managers in the game. Like, we like what we have with the two of you. We want to keep this together. Bob, do what you do. Squeeze the every ounce of talent out of this team. Help them reach their potential, as you have in the past. Do what we brought you here to do, and help sort out some of the clubhouse issues, the leadership issues, all that. You need to get that situated. Okay, that's on you. AJ, stay in your lane. Okay, figure out the roster. Do what needs to be done in the minor leagues, all that stuff that comes with, the PBO title within the franchise, yada, yada, yada. Figure out the roster. Let Bob Melvin do his job. Okay. Stay out of the way. Don't have this level of communication that you hear about with players and that sort of thing. And part of that would be, Bob, it's your coaching staff. Okay. So who do you want? And maybe more importantly, who do you not want around? Maybe you don't want Don Tricker hanging around. Okay. Any of these like moles, that are in the clubhouse that aren't necessarily Bob's guys, but are around and they're asking questions, and maybe they're mouthpieces for AJ or relaying information. It's not happening. Okay. AJ, I've given you everything you've wanted. I've given you carte blanche. I've given you money. Like, our payroll is insane. I've greenlit all these deals. Like, I've given you everything you've wanted from that standpoint, and I will continue to give you everything I possibly can. But that's what you're doing. You're in charge of the roster. You're in charge of kind of big umbrella over the system. But you are not in charge of what happens on the field. We brought in Bob Melvin to be Bob Melvin. Bob Melvin, go be Bob Melvin. Now, how do those guys respond to that? That's ultimately the question. I can just make up this dream scenario, but
it makes a lot of sense what you just said. That would be wonderful.
Maybe Preller isn't cool with that. Maybe Melvin isn't cool with that. And, that ultimately is most important. But that would seem to be a conversation that makes sense. And I, given Seidler's affection for Preller, I wouldn't be surprised if it played out that way, rather than just being like, hey, AJ, time's up. Thanks. Best of luck in your future endeavors.
Yeah, maybe it is as simple as these people here who we're hearing are big problems with the players and the manager. They have to go. I know they're your buddies. Prove to me what their value is. How do they make this organization better? Nobody seems to know. If they can do that, or he can do that, then maybe they can get some sort of a working common ground here. I don't know. It seems like that situation is far too gone at this point, and now it's just salvaging whatever you can that's left. I'd like to hope I'm wrong on that, but it sure doesn't sound that way, because once you see distrust in a professional locker room, a clubhouse, whatever it is, it's really hard to get that out of there without removing the people who are the source of the distrust. You have to show that you are, giving a mea culpa. You have to show that you're getting rid of whatever the perceived problem is. So people aren't looking over their shoulder, wondering what's being reported back or who's looking at what or what somebody's doing there. A lot of those guys don't like it when the media walks in and they're expecting us to come in because they don't trust us. You got people in the organization who are looked at as moles for the front office. That causes a massive problem. They just clean up some of this, trim some of this fat, drain the swamp, whatever phrase you want to use, get rid of some of this stuff and streamline it. It's like, let's go out and win some damn ball games.
Yeah. There's it's definitely a cluttered. You just based on what's been written, you get a sense it's a really cluttered clubhouse and just disjointed and too many voices and all that. Where especially in a season like this, you needed to kind of streamline things out, keep it simple, and just do whatever you can to make sure there's kind of a unified message to these players and do what needs to be done to help them kind of be the best versions of themselves. And I also think, I think it was Dennis Lynn's piece in The Athletic talking about, like, it painted a picture of AJ just not being able to help himself and just wanting to kind of be involved. And any of us who worry too much, you realize, like, all this worrying hasn't changed the outcome, hasn't affected the situation. You know what I mean? And so there's a certain point where we just got to sit back and be like, okay, things are going to play out the way they're going to play out. And hopefully this is a lesson for AJ, like whatever level of meddling he's done, it hasn't helped. And so that should be a lesson at a certain point where, okay, maybe I do need to kind of work on having some faith in these people that have probably earned it, and take a step back and kind of let them do their thing.
All right, we got 10 minutes left here. Let's go with a couple of these comments. And Lauren Casuto here. This is a good one. I remember we've talked for a long time, ever since going back to the Charger days. I remember when I used to be a Charger fan, and the joke was that the team would make me want to drink. The 2023 Padres make me want to do drugs until something somehow makes sense. Might I suggest the Sgt. Pepper's album? You might like that one, but you're absolutely right, because none of this makes sense. Maybe copious amounts of LSD or something. I don't know. Lots of gummies. Gummies are legal. We can say people can do gummies. Yeah. Todd Strain. I don't know who that clown is. Hey guys, who cares about haters whip Soto slug? What I really want to know is, can I bring my service alligator into Petco Park?
You can't do it.
Assuming it is less than 5 feet long and well trained, I think that's probably a good bet. What's going on in Philadelphia with the service alligators, man?
I don't know. That's I would expect that at like an LSU game or something like that, but I never came across any gators in my time in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's the thing. The gators are certainly not native to Pennsylvania, as far as I know. No. So JD's third. How does Cesar Gomez know about Soto's contract extension before the Monday meeting? I don't know.
We don't know that he knows, but
we don't know that he knows. We don't know that Soto knows. We don't know the meeting is going to be on Monday. It could be at that giant concrete thing they call a ballpark in Chicago on the south side. We don't know for sure when that's going to happen. And I can almost guarantee you that Scott Boras is going to have a few things to say long before anybody announces any kind of Juan Soto contract extension.
As promised, while we're hearing from the folks, we got a few messages on the hotline from people weighing in, mostly on the Preller-Melvin situation. These were kind of from before a lot of the pieces that came out, but still relevant to the situation that they're in, since there's some decisions that need to be made.
Hi, my name's Vito. Calling all the way from Sacramento. I've been a Padres fan mostly my whole life. I think what has to be changed is getting rid of AJ Preller. I mean, we've seen for 10 years what the results are. And we've had a couple of outlier seasons, or maybe one outlier season. I don't want to count 2020 really. But he has a knack from making the splashy signings, but he can't build a competent roster. He doesn't invest in player development or, anything internally to make sure that when these players get here that they perform. And we've seen it over the course of the almost decade that nothing's really changed. So if you keep AJ Preller at this point, it's kind of like changing your tires while your engine's on fire. The car still isn't going to move, and it's probably going to blow up. All right.
Doesn't paint a super positive picture for AJ Preller, but I have a good analogy.
Yeah, it's a good take. One thing I think is a little bit off base is they have invested in player development. They've invested a lot in it. What they've done simply hasn't worked, obviously. So whatever they're doing, what they've done, like they have made a focused effort in trying to develop players in their minor league systems. It's not working. The guys aren't coming in and just being world beaters the first day that they arrive, like we've seen pretty much every Dodgers rookie since Becky Robinson be able to come up and do. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there is. And it's not even really about the track record, you throw out, 15, big swing, again, lots of talent, no chemistry, it all falls apart. 16, 17, 18, and pretty much all of 19, that was designed to rebuild, right? You can't hold those records against AJ. So what would happen in the last 4 years? 2 playoff appearances, one of them shortened season, and 2 collapses of historic proportions. And I think in this one, the collapses probably outweigh the 2 playoff appearances. Now, had they won the World Series last year, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But, they didn't want to use Josh Hader to try to get 4 outs in the freaking playoffs either.
Chris agrees. Two things. I feel like Sadler is going to get both men in a room on Monday to either hash it out or figure out who is getting fired. It seems like I would love to be a fly on the wall in that meeting. Somebody that sees things a little bit differently. Let's hear what they have to say. This is kind of a funny message. I get the sense this guy was maybe enjoying himself before he called in.
Man, I see so many people blaming AJ Preller for what's going on with the Padres, and I cannot disagree more. Let me tell you why. Honestly, we see AJ Preller has built an incredible roster of talent, of MVP caliber players, and we cannot blame him for them not doing their best in the field. And who is that to blame? The manager is supposed to be getting the best out of the players in the field. I cannot agree with people who think AJ Preller is the problem when you look at the Padres record in one-run games. You look at the record in extra innings. What the hell is going on in that clubhouse? What is going on in their minds? They have nothing clutch about them. They have no swag. They don't have that winning attitude. Who's got to cultivate the attitude? Yes, the players have to do it, but who makes sure that it happens? It's the manager. I just don't see Melvin's a fit. You got to have fire. You got to have passion. You got to have the hype, live up to the hype. You got to remove Melvin. And I hear everyone talking about Preller saying that Preller has had so many managers under his belt. Well, he's obviously not good at finding managers, but just because you're not good and he's made some mistakes in the past doesn't mean he should give up now. Find a manager that's going to kick ass. Let's go, Padres.
Lost me a little bit towards the end, but I appreciate that.
Disagree with that wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly, because again, it goes back. Okay, they're 17-7 in September, right? That winning record with Matt Patton and Jurickson Profar. His moves are working in September. The pinch hitters are working. The bullpen moves are working. He's not doing anything differently. They did the entirety of the season. The guys are simply playing better. And by the way, it's a different roster full of guys. Seems like these guys just get along a little better. The clubhouse vibe is a little bit more loose. It's roster construction. It's not the way that these guys are being used. It's not the lack of motivation. By the way, if you're making $300 million and you need to be motivated, then that's on the DM for giving the wrong guy $300 million freaking dollars. Because that dude should not be getting that kind of cash. It's not a motivation issue. It's a coalescing. It's a gelling issue. And now Melvin, the exact same thing. But guess what? It's working because you have different players on the field.
Yeah, and I think their record in close games last year kind of illustrates that as well. Back to Chris. Secondly, I love Soto a lot, like him on this team, but his future needs to be addressed this offseason, either extend him or trade him. I mean, Chris doesn't want to go into one of those seasons where spend the entire time, we're over at his locker day after day asking him if there's been conversations, and we see Scott Boras around, and it's just a constant conversation distraction, like his future, like the Nats dealt with a year ago,
or like the Angels dealt with this year with Shohei Ohtani. Yeah, and then ultimately probably made the worst decision they could have possibly made.
Yeah. One last one before we go.
And a big AJ defender, but I think I'm coming around on potentially he is the change that needs to be made. It's so frustrating to see these teams developing all this talent and to see the scouting acumen that AJ clearly has, and to just be like, all we need is to add in the development piece, and this could be we could be the Dodgers. Like, we could be the perfect organization, and to just have failed to do it for so long is so frustrating. So also, I just wanted to throw out, I'm starting to question a little bit, and maybe this is unfair and I do love him and having him on the team, but I'm starting to question Manny's leadership a little bit. 2019, they seemingly quit on Andy Green. 2020, they seemingly quit on Jace Tingler. I'm not saying they quit on Bob Melvin, but it seems like they've quit on the season at points this year. And so I start to question if he is the guy to be that extension of the manager in the clubhouse. Because it seems like the team just doesn't always fight with, the most will. And so I start to wonder if maybe he's a part of that. And again, maybe that's unfair. He seems just really even keeled. So maybe it is just like he just doesn't get too high or too low. And that's just not the right mentality for the team. I don't know. But just some things I've been thinking about. This is probably too long of a message for the hotline, but maybe it sparks some conversation. Love the podcast. Later.
Appreciate it.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, that's an interesting point because, I mean, if anything, it seems to me this year, the Padres did anything but quit on Bob Melvin because they should have been mathematically eliminated 2 weeks ago. And they've gone on this crazy, awesome run that has been like, if you were going into the postseason, this is exactly how you'd want to go to the postseason. All their problems at the beginning of the year, it was almost like they were sleepwalking through things, waiting for them to finally get to the team that they knew they were going to be. So, I mean, if anything, it was, shoot, we're making Bob look bad. We better snap to and wake up here and get going. So if anything, I think the fact that they got so much better at the end of the year is an indication they do like and enjoy their manager. If anything, because you're right, it's the exact opposite. The Green 45 and 45 at the All-Star break. Fire the manager by the end of the year, before the end of the year. Jace Tingler, one of the worst collapses in the history of Major League Baseball in the second half of that season. This one is the opposite. They weren't good early, and then they really caught fire late because I think they do really enjoy, like, and respect Bob Melvin.
Yeah. Interesting situation. I mean, all those are conversations that are going to have to be had, clubhouse dynamics, leadership, Manny's role there, and obviously the Melvin Preller situation. Who's going to be running that? We'll see. We'll find out and hopefully get some clarity early next week. Certainly some interesting days and weeks ahead, and we will be here to discuss it all with you. I wouldn't be shocked if there was an emergency podcast or bonus episode coming up maybe early next year in the near future as some of these things start to come to light. I would imagine we'll hear from some of the decision makers, hopefully in a more kind of formal setting at some point early next week. So we will be on top of that. As always, appreciate you being with us. Appreciate those who have called and left messages, and everybody kind of just being involved with the podcast means a lot to us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Good to see you, Derek Togerson. Have a wonderful weekend, and catch everybody soon.